Hey everybody, I want to talk about a product and platform that I absolutely love and our latest sponsor, Interseller, the prospecting and outreach platform of choice for recruiters and sellers. Whether you're doubling down on business development or recruiting talent, Interseller does all the heavy lifting of finding contact data, automating the email and follow-up process, and syncs all that rich data into 20 plus CRM and ATS platforms. Reach out now and get going on a 2-week free trial and let them know you heard about it from Adam on the podcast today. Check out the link on the website. Appreciate it.
Welcome to the podcast, where we introduce you to incredible humans who share their journeys with the mission to inspire you to harness your own inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. And now, your host, Adam Posner.
Welcome back to the podcast, where I bring you the best and the brightest in the world of business, entrepreneurship, and yes, recruiting. We are getting back to our roots today because ultimately what we want to do is help you harness your own inner tenacity to drive your career forward. You know it. You've heard it before. My guest today on the podcast is Dan Fantasia, CEO and founder of Treeline. And Treeline was founded in 2001 and is known for helping companies hire elite sales professionals in 30 days or less. We're going to get into that because I'm curious. And with a 97% success rate in a network, well over 100,000 sales professionals, Treeline has changed the lives of over 3,500 sales professionals. That's what we do in recruiting. We change lives. But people, they don't want to give us credit for that. And as you guys know, this show really started with me speaking to other great folks in the world of TA and recruiting. It's always great to talk to someone else who is pairing great talent with great companies. And Dan is a rock star in that respect when it comes to the world of sales. And I'm excited to geek out with him a bit on recruiting tactics. So if you're either in this world or not, this is going to be a good one. So let's get to it. Dan Fantasia, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Well, welcome to the show here. Dan and I had a nice little lively pre-chat, and I should record one of these one day because it's fun, right? Like whenever the guests come on the show, we chat for a few minutes before we hit record, and some of these conversations are great. They're icebreakers, and when you have two recruiters in the room, I mean, this is what we do for a living. Right, Dan? Like, we get on the phone with people we don't know. And I tell my wife, I go on 10 blind dates a day. Guys, girls, it doesn't matter. I'll talk to anybody, right? You need to have icebreakers.
Sometimes we talk to so many people, right? Adam, you have to feel this. You get home, you're done. You don't want to talk. You've been talking for so long. You just need a break.
All right. So let me ask this. I'm going off script here for a moment. Like when you get on the phone with candidates, right? Do you have like your icebreakers? Do you mix it up? Like I try not to just talk about the weather because it seems so lame, right? I try to say where they're from. Like Dan's from Boston, so I'm going to do an icebreaker with the ball. I try to base it on geography. Where do you go to in your mind for the icebreaker? Intro, quick chat.
So for us, we train to look at the resume, be prepared, and find some common interests. Find something you're interested in, and then ask questions around that, right? They're already introducing themselves to us with a resume. So typically take 15 minutes or 5 minutes before the interview, do some research, look on LinkedIn, see what they've posted recently.
Exactly.
Look at their resume, find something that you can connect with. And that's how we typically start to build the relationship.
And it's not rocket science, and it works for recruiters too, right? Like take a couple of minutes beforehand and not just look at the resume, look at the LinkedIn, be like, oh, I saw you post something about, toxic work culture. Yeah, let's talk about that for a moment here. So let's pause on the recruiting stuff and let's hit the rewind button on Dan's career. And I feel with sales folks, there's always kind of aha moment. And I talked about my first sales experience in high school. I was part of this business club called DECA, which is Distributive Education Club of America. And I competed in sales competitions. And that's where I knew and found that I had the sales bug. And for you, let's talk about that first job. Correct me if I'm wrong. You were out of college working at a ski shop. What was that like?
I worked at Jackson Hole Sports. Yep. 1993. It was awesome. At that time in my life, right, Adam, you're the same way. I was outgoing. I wanted to travel. I was living in a van with my buddy, which was probably the best experience of my life. Oh,
man, that's a whole separate show.
Oh, yeah.
Dan, did they call you Dan the Van Man? Like, no. I mean, Dan's van. I mean, it just works.
Listen, the van was a piece of junk. We couldn't get the heat, and we were in Wyoming. We couldn't get the heat to work. We had to put some.
You had a campfire in the van.
Yeah. We had to put cardboard in front of the radiator because it got so cold. Thing would never blow heat. It was crazy. So, But yeah, it was awesome. I was a ski bum tech rental guy, and it was a wonderful experience. I'm so thankful I had the opportunity.
And
I was broke. I made no money.
Right. But like you go back to those days, you were upselling, cross-selling skis and stuff. When did it click? Was it that one time that you upsold somebody on a pair of skis that they didn't need, right? Or was it like a suggestive selling thing? When was it like you felt that you had that ability to persuade and compel in conversation?
You know what? I was naive. I didn't figure it out too much later in my career. When I got back from Wyoming, when I settled down and I tried to find, I was looking for a job and looking for work, and I was working the night shift at a CAD CAM company. I was promoted in that company by a gentleman that really believed in me, and he really moved me up to the GM and really the salesperson. That's when I started to figure out that I could sell, right? I didn't understand it until then. And luckily he was a really strong entrepreneur and sales guy. So he was teaching me. But when I really learned how to sell was when I left that company. I went to a recruiting firm. It was called Diversified Communications. And that a gentleman by the name of Tony Natella. He was the CEO. When I joined that company, that's when I learned really how to sell. That's when I learned how to listen. That's how I learned to understand people's motivations and selfish needs, and to talk to those things that are important to them and not important to me.
So let's pause on that for a moment, because I do want to talk about something that hit the light bulb in my head is motivation, because I truly believe in recruiting that you need to understand the candidate's motivation. And that's what I learned day one in recruiting. I had a great mentor, a gentleman by the name of Tom Hall, who said, you need to understand a candidate's motivation, because you're going to use it. And I don't mean this in a bad way. You're going to use this against them. You can use this for them. Why do they want to make a move? Because every candidate wants to make a move, and you have to find out what those motivators are. Is it money? Some people are straight up motivated by money. Some people are in a shitty job and they want to leave. Toxic boss, toxic culture, whatever you want. They're not getting promoted or value. Maybe their wife or spouse, whatever, is chirping in their ear that it's time to leave because, again, they need to get money. There's all these external factors, and you got to figure it out. But before we unpack that, I want to hit the rewind button. There's very few people, and I only know one, my buddy James, who went from college into recruiting, that actually everyone kind of stumbles into recruiting. I mean, how did you stumble into this profession, the dark arts, as we like to call it?
You know why? There was a person that I was working with. They recommended I went to this recruiting firm. It was my first experience. I didn't know what recruiting firms were. I didn't know if it cost me money. It didn't cost me money. I didn't know what was going on. I went to the company. I was interviewing for sales roles in the software industry, basically. And they stopped me and they said, before you consider any of these offers, what about doing this? I'm like, I don't even know what this is. It was 100% commission, right? 100% commission, but I love the environment. I like the company. I like the culture. I bought in. So I started with a company called Diversified Communications, and I basically started off failing. I failed for 6 months, and the CEO was basically, at one point, the aha moment was the CEO was like, what the hell are you doing? Right? So I was just being led around by candidates. I couldn't give them advice. There was no leadership. And so as a result, they were making bad mistakes because I wasn't strong enough to show them the way to advance their career.
So you jumped into recruiting, but you weren't onboarded and trained properly yourself, right? You're kind of just like, go for it. Is that what happened?
No, I was trained properly, but I had my own mental block. I couldn't.
Okay, so we're not throwing anyone under the bus here. Okay, so
no, oh God, no.
So what do you think it was? Were you overthinking it? Did you think? And I experienced this too, where you think you know something better than somebody else. Like, no, I know the way to do this. I remember when I was a candidate, right? Like I could do it better than them. But you're like, shit, wait, these people. I'm putting up goose eggs, every week, every month.
You know what it was, Adam? Fear. I was, until my CEO whacked me, I was more fearful of upsetting candidates. So I couldn't give them good advice because I couldn't give advice because I was just listening. I was letting them lead the conversation, but they needed to hear the honest truth. I couldn't do that. When my CEO finally whacked me and said, what the hell are you doing? That was the aha moment where I was more scared of my CEO than I was of changing my ways. And then once I figured that out, I became a top producer and the youngest managing partner.
That's interesting. So what were you recruiting for? What was the industry?
Sales.
So you're recruiting sales
Only
folks.
Sales.
Only sales. But here's the thing, and let's break it down for people out there. And I've recruited sales roles before. This is a tough one. When you're talking to it, it's a sales guy talking to a sales guy. It's alpha or a sales lady, right? It's alpha talking to alpha. They're hyping up their numbers. They're hyping up their experience. What were some of those kind of dark art tactics you used to really understand? Are you bullshitting me? Are you telling the truth? How are you breaking down the numbers? How are you breaking down OTE versus comp? Like finding out their motivators. Let's get into that a little bit. Let's talk shop. And you can talk about how you even do it now.
Yeah, let me take it. Oh God, talk about totally different. Let me just take a step back for a second. The way that we used to bring in sales candidates.
And by the way, we're sorry. Just pause there for a second. What's it? Let's put a timestamp on this. How many years ago?
Oh, this was 1997.
Right. So just to reference everyone, there's no LinkedIn. There's very limited databases. You might have an Excel sheet, but otherwise you're using Rolodex. You're using these giant notepads. It is very analog and manual, and right, like it's Rolodex style.
Oh, that is actually, that's a great point. Just to pause like that. Yeah. Thank you for doing that.
Let's talk for a second about the technology.
Where it was a 3-ring binder. We didn't have computers at the time when I started. It was a 3-ring binder. I'd be calling into companies trying to find sales. First, I had to get into the directory. Then I'd be going through the directory.
That was a game too. I've heard fun stories about that. How to hack directories and pretending like it was like covert CIA operation. Yeah, hi. This is Paul from AT&T. We're coming in to read you the phone directory. I just want to make sure I have everyone's names and numbers correct here, right? Like,
oh, you know what? I'd call after hours and I would just push the next button. Wrong extension. John Smith. Wrong extension. Susie Smith. Wrong extension. I would just write down the names. I call them the next day and find out who's in sales and who wasn't. Think about the time suck on that, right, Adam? Just the time. You'd be there all the time trying to get people. And now, the team can look at LinkedIn and you can see everything.
Yeah, I could scrape. I could scrape your blood type off of LinkedIn. It's like that.
So then you don't know. You don't see their resume. You have no idea who they are. You cold call them. You gain interest. You convince them to come to the office to meet with you. And then after they come to the office, you've got to figure out if you have any opportunities you can help them with or not. And then you're giving them advice. It's like, talk about heavy lifting. I mean, you had a hustle. That was a real hustle.
So do you remember from a technological evolution when like, what was it? Like Monster and Indeed came out, but that was pre-LinkedIn even.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I remember the first ATS. We didn't get our first ATS system. So we were faxing resumes to clients, right? That's how it started. It was basically who worked the hardest. I'd be the first one there. I'd be the last one to leave. And it's basically how many people can you get in touch with? And then basically, can you give them advice? Can you consult with them? And can you add value to their career? You can do that. Then that's how you become a top producer. You just basically outwork everyone and really learn all the subtleties to being successful.
So you're saying hard work beats talent any day?
Yeah, I just wrote a blog on that actually.
Don't you agree? I agree with it. Like, you know what I mean? Like I remember that like, you know, I've had my failures in my career before I went into recruiting, even in recruiting too, obviously, but it's hard work, right? Like you put in the work, you outwork the competition and you're going to win. I mean, sure, talent helps, but if talent's lazy, you're not getting anywhere.
No, yeah. I just wrote a blog on that. And that is the thing. You got to want to work. You have to hold yourself accountable. You've got to find, work. You have to find work to be enjoyable without becoming a workaholic and destroying your personal life. Mm-hmm. But basically, you need to work. So
let's talk about the thesis that led to creating the vision for Treeline. You were in recruiting. You're working for a number of years for other people. What was that impetus and that light bulb that went off and said, you know what, I got this idea to do my own thing?
I was, I'm still good friends with the CEO and all the past managing partners. The company's no longer in business, but the reason why I left is I had built a phenomenal team. I had no turnover, but the environment was becoming cutthroat. We were losing our vision. In my mind, we were losing our way. And so I started Treeline to build a company that wasn't about me. It's not named Fantasia recruiting firm or what have you. It's a company bigger than myself. So the idea is hire great people, build a wonderful environment, give them an incredible opportunity with awesome training, and really build a national brand. And that's what we've done. It's been wonderful. We've been the best place to work in Boston, for 10 years or so, usually number 1, 2, or 3. Inc. magazine recognized us. Same thing. I don't know, it's past 8 years or something. Best place to work. It's just a good, healthy environment. A lot of great competition. And it's built around success.
So yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about culture a little bit. Like what are those keys to having? I mean, listen, recruiting is sales. Recruiting is sales, and sales could be cutthroat because at the end of the day, people are a product. Money is what moves us. How do you keep a culture of folks motivated while still, producing?
Work. You know what it is? Work is work, but it can be super fun. right? If you make work, if you're always like the hammer down and you're not having fun. And when I say fun, I mean the smallest basic things, right? We do themes and we meet every morning and we're telling jokes. I've got enough joke books.
Hawaiian shirt Friday. Yep.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you name it. As many fun. And by the way, when it comes to fun, it's not about, it doesn't have to be from the top down. It's everyone.
Right.
What do you want to do to make this fun? We do something called start, stop, keeps. Every quarter, we ask the team, what do you want to start doing? What do you want to stop doing? What do you want to keep doing? And that could be from a cultural perspective, the technology perspective, anything you want. But the idea is we're all part of it. Let's have fun with it. Let's build this phenomenal organization. And when everyone's part of it, everyone's contributing, and then you can build a really healthy environment that continues to grow.
Right. And I look, and it's funny too. I look back on the first firm that I worked at, and I went from working not in recruiting into recruiting. So it was important for me. I didn't want to go to like one of the Solomon Page or the big or like Robert Half places where I was wearing a suit and smiling and dialing all day. I knew that wasn't for me, and that's not the way I operated. I looked for a firm that was relationship based. That I knew that they were going to leverage my personality, my skills, and my network. That's what it was going for, and the way I operate. And that's what they did. They threw me on a full desk. I was able to balance both sides and pick it up. But again, I want to hit the rewind button when you launch, because it was 2001. You're about to start this company. You're married. You just bought a house. You're 6 months away from 9/11. Like, what was it like launching a company in that environment? Like early on, like the world was shook, man. I mean, I was just down. I was down this weekend. I was down I was down at the World Trade Center site, and I took my wife there for the first time and my kids, and I had to explain to my almost 11-year-old daughter what happened here. And I was just very, like, we were standing there where World Trade Center 1, we're looking down into the memorial. And it was a crazy moment for me. And like, I said to myself, how am I going to explain this to her? And I said, you know what? I'm going to explain this. She's 11 years old. I'm going to explain this exactly what happened. And that was a crazy moment that like, she wasn't alive for this. She wasn't there and we experienced it. I mean, talk us through your time in launching a company, uncertainty.
Yeah, and a company called Treeline. That was when I left Diversified, I had a 1-year non-compete. I honored it for over 3 years. I told the guys, listen, I'll start this on my own. I'm not going to
plenty of fish out there.
I'll do it. And it was tough. So we originally started in the pharmaceutical market. That was helping pharma companies build sales organizations. Well, guess how many pharmaceutical HR teams and hiring managers want to pick up the phone from a company called Treeline? Right? Yeah. I mean, it's at the time the name was just, it was, for me, it was around something different than recruiting, right? The name is around like skiing and outdoor competition. So now it's been a blessing because the name's so unique. We've been doing this for 22 years that now people know us. It's a wonderful thing now. But
right, you're not like rocket talent, star talent. Like I remember when I was named, my company is named after my daughter because I know no one else is going to have that name, and I know that's my motivator. NHP Talent Group are my daughter's initials. Right, you want to have something that's.
I was wondering what that was. I didn't know that. Yeah, I was reading the website. No, that's cool.
Well, yeah, I mean the whole story with that is like I was thinking of names when I was naming my company, and I literally had a list of like kind of all these like cliche kind of names, and I'm like, that's not working. And my wife's like, this is before my son was born. She's like, what's the most important thing in the world to you? I'm like, well, my daughter Nina. She's like, well, why don't you name the company after her? And I'm like, well, I'm not going to call it like Nina Talent Recruiting. I'm like NHP Talent Group. I'm like, boom, done.
Love it.
Yeah,
love it.
Like
same. I was the same way. I was like, it's not about me. It's something different. I want, it's about something bigger, right? So I love that. Really cool.
So 22 years in the business, man. What was one of those early lessons learned the hard way, as we like to say, from not from so much of a recruiting perspective, but is running a business and managing people?
Well, I'd say this early on. That the hard part about starting a business is you're taking on all kinds of clients. What I've learned is you've got to fire the crappy ones. I mean, no matter what,
even in desperate times,
they're
right?
cancerous. They just suck the life out of you. Nothing.
And your employees, right? Like you're putting your employees on a shitty client, and they don't want to stay. I mean, listen, there are times like right now, there's certain times when the market's rough and you got to take on something that may not be. But in a perfect world, you should be able to pick and choose what you're working on, right? Yeah,
I mean, we've been doing this for 22 years. We're not a huge organization. We're large when it comes to sales recruiting. We're probably one of the largest in the nation, but we probably are the largest in the nation that is exclusive to sales. That's all we do. But I tell you, it is tough to build that brand because sales recruiting is difficult. Number one. Number two is when we build the sales organization, it's done. Then we move on to the next one. So we have to build and get really strong people into sales We've got to keep them in sales, and we're trying to build this huge network of sales talent that can rely on us to help them find opportunities that they just don't have access to. Right. So it's that community and that network. I mean, that's taken a long time. For us, we have very little turnover. We had 2 people fall out last year. That's it. That's like that's not consistent.
But where'd they go? Did they go to another firm or did they leave the profession?
No, not at Treeline.
Oh, you're talking about employees. You're talking about hires falling off. Got it.
We do such a great job of making sure we're not trying to oversell the candidate or oversell the client. If it's a good fit, it's a good fit. And if it's not, let's pause for a second. I'd rather keep building pipeline to find the right person than to have you hire the wrong person, both for the candidate and for the client. It's a nightmare experience. You disrupted someone's career. They're pissed. The client's pissed. Like, let's slow down for a second. Let's find the right hire, and then let's go from there.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because I preach this all the time, and I'm not trying to pitch my model or anything, but it's about slowing down. Listen.
Yeah.
Most of the time when there's an open role, it's because of attrition. And what's happening on the client side is other people within the organization are having to step up and do 2-3 times the amount of work to fill that. So there's always a time factor. They need to fill quickly. But you don't want to rush it and push someone into the role who's not right, because then you're going to just destroy it even more, and you can have this vicious cycle. So what are some of those processes on both sides of the equation to ensure that we're doing the right thing on all sides?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is to make sure we fully understand what the client wants, right? What do they need? And then number 2 is, how realistic is it, right? If it's not realistic, if they're looking for a competitor that has a non-compete and they're paying less money, I will be educating and telling them there's no silver bullet here. You can't bring us in and think that we're going to change this problem. This is a problem. We've got to re-architect the search strategy so that we can help you find talent and grow your organization, right? So it's all about understanding their needs. But like I said, we've been doing this for 22 years. No joke. Within the first 3 days, we guarantee we're going to bring you a candidate that meets your exact needs.
3 days.
We are on it.
That's how big your network
fast.
is.
Yeah, we are so fast. Like, it is. Even I sometimes I look at searches and go, wow, this is a pretty complicated search. It is amazing. It is amazing how good our team is. It's
because
usually 6 to 8
you have pipelines,
people.
right? Like you know,
That's right.
You know who's looking,
Yes.
you know who's not, and even if it's a very passive search, you know where to look because you've done this for so long. And that's what I always say too to my clients, and they look at our feeds and they go, "You're not paying me for the out. You're paying us for the experience. We know where to go. We know what to do. If we fill this role quickly, it's because we know what we're doing."
I mean, and think of it this way too, right? The internal TA team or the recruiting team, they have a million other jobs to focus on. Sales is one of the hardest things to recruit on, right? So as a result, they don't really do that much recruiting. And as a result, now the VP or the hiring manager, they kind of get a small pipeline and they basically end up hiring the best of the worst. And that's why they have turnover and have and they fail basically. If you come to us, I mean, you know what, I'd say this, our candidates are better. You can use us on a contingency basis. Interview as many candidates you want on your own. If ours aren't better, don't hire them.
Don't hire them.
Yeah, I am that confident that you will be that blown away by the service. It's just we've been doing this for Adam, like, right? 22 years. We've been doing this forever, and we're so genuine that we've built long-term relationships with so many people. It's been great.
You know what? And I think, listen, our profession gets a bad name. It really does. And I think it's kind of like used car salesmen, right? There's some great used car salesmen out there, but it's those sharks at the bottom, those bottom feeders. It's funny. I just shut my phone off. My buddy just sent me a message that some scumbag recruiter is trying to scumbag them, right? Like, and that just gives our whole reputation, that whole industry, a bad rep. So it comes down to long-term relationships. And I say, listen, one key metric for me is retention with clients. They come in and out. It's almost like I don't want our clients to need us anymore because we filled their roles for them.
You're right.
Right? So when they come back and say, we have a new role, we're expanding, or they're doing referrals are the lifeblood. Referrals to me are the golden KPI. When one of my clients refers me to one of their friends or clients in the industry and says, hey, we had a great experience working with Adam and his team. You should work with him. That is like gold. Give me that freaking first place trophy, right?
Yeah, it's the same with us, but you know what? You got to do the right thing, right? We're not a staffing firm. We're a search firm, right? That's where we are. That's what we do. We help our clients find very talented, specific individuals that meet their requirements. Yeah. It's like that. That's where we live.
Hey there, fellow podcast listeners. I'm Kevin Logan Jr., host of the Immutable Mindset podcast. If you're fascinated by Web3, blockchain, and disruptive technology, then you won't want to miss a show. Join me and co-host Adam Posner as we introduce you to an incredible lineup of successful entrepreneurs, builders, and industry veterans who share their insider knowledge, unique perspectives, and personal stories that will leave you inspired and craving more. Like Mike Isogawa, the CEO of Webacy, who shares her journey from being a Cirque du Soleil performer to a cybersecurity pioneer. Or Dave Schwed, COO of Halborn, who discusses the future of digital asset security and how the future of assets will be tokenized. We also break down complex topics into digestible bits, perfect for both experts and newcomers to the world of Web3. So if you're ready to stay ahead of the curve, subscribe to the Immutable Mindset podcast now, wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Let's talk about what makes a good recruiter. Let's talk about those hard and soft skills. I mean, what do you look for? What have you identified over the years of that DNA, those key attributes?
Yeah. One, of course, work ethic. And, for us, when we interview Adam, when we talk to a candidate, the first thing we say is, this is not an interview. It's just conversation. You don't have to sell me. I'm not going to sell you. I get excited about our company. It's not intentional, but we're just trying to figure out if this is a good match, right? You ask me any question you want, I will tell you. I'll tell you what's rough about this job. I'll tell you what's great about it. You ask me any question you want, and I'll tell you. Right. And vice versa. Don't feel like you're, when I'm not going to grill you with any trick questions, I just want you to be honest with me. Just be honest. So that's number one. Number two is I like to understand the story. Everything that's not on the resume, like what'd you do when you, like your story, like DECA, like, is that on your resume? Is it on LinkedIn? Maybe, I don't know. I didn't see it, but I'm trying to convince my son to do that, by the way.
Yeah. Do it.
So the point is I want to understand that a person has worked, like they have had to roll up their sleeves, and throughout their entire life, they just gravitate toward work, right? They just want to work. So that, and the only way to figure that out is all the stuff that you don't see on the resume, right? Like, what did you do? Oh, I grew up with, a family of 5, and I worked at 15 years old, and I rode my bike.
Story is important, and the ability to articulate your story. I always say the elevator pitch is one of the most underrated skills that you should have. You should be able to walk into any room and do a 30-second pitch, a 2-second pitch. When someone asks me what I do, I could tell them in 2 seconds. Or if I know if I'm sitting down for a drink or a dinner, I could elaborate a little bit more. The ability to tell your story succinctly and do it well is key.
And then we look for consistency, right? Then I want to understand the story. I want to understand who you are. Now we have core values. So I want to understand their work ethic, but then we interview on their core values, right? We want them to fit with our organization. Do what's right. Empowering people, compete to win every day, and grit. Those are the 4 key aspects. So, for example, do the right thing. One of the questions we'll ask is, have you ever parked at a handicap spot?
Yeah, I've done it. I try not. I mean, I've done it only in an emergency situation, right? Like if I'm at a store and I got one of my kids in the car and I got to run in for 2 seconds and there's no other spots, but I'm not going to do it by myself. It's only in an emergency. Yeah. My other one is like, all right. Hot take, pause for a second. What are your thoughts on returning the shopping cart to the thing versus leaving it in the middle of the parking lot? Do you look at people that don't do that and roll your eyes and make, motherfucker? I
mean, I think. Listen, there's a lot of things happening in people's lives, right? if you're in a huge rush and you're like, I got to get the hell out of here. I've got to be home. My wife something happened. All right, I don't know what happens in. It's kind of like road rage, right? I don't know what's going on in people's life. So I'm trying to look at it with an open perspective, thinking, well, I don't know what's going to happen. The handicap thing. So this is interesting about the handicap question. If some people say, no way, never. Some people say, yeah, I have. What I'm looking for is the honesty. Like you just said, listen, I don't, and you say, I do, I've done it. I'm honest about it.
Because that's what the handicap spot first. It's only an emergency.
Right. So you don't know what's happening in people's lives. So I just want to understand those things, right? Grit. I mean, you need grit. There's a lot of.
So how do you determine grit on a job interview versus someone just blowing smoke up your ass?
Yeah, that's.
Is it for a case study? Are you looking for a case study? Tell me time. Like, are you looking for like a real example?
You know what? When I interview people, I love when they research the company and they know what the core values are. If they don't know the core values, it's okay. Not a big deal. I'm going to tell you what they are. And then we ask, situational interview questions like, have you parked in a handicap spot or whatever. But for grit, same thing. For grit, it's about like an experience. Just tell me about an experience that you've really struggled through. Like what in your life have you had to struggle through and come out on the other side as a positive? Like what is it? right? So questions like that to understand that they've had some adversity, they've had to work really hard, because in our business, we work with people, you know this, Adam, right? They're unpredictable.
It's the X
so
factors.
as high hopes as you might have, you have to be prepared to be flattened every now and then. And without grit, you can't come back. You can't come back from it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, I think that's a key. So the things that I look for when I bring recruiters onto my team, I need curiosity. You need to be insanely curious. So you're asking the right questions. So you're going beneath the surface. So you're really digging deep and you're pulling that back. And you know, that's a tough one. And we talk about this all the time. You see it all over LinkedIn. People like hire for character, train for skill, which parts of it in theory I agree with. Obviously you want good people on your team, but you need skills. You need those skills. So what are some of those like hard skills that you're looking for from your recruiters?
They need, so one skill right off the bat is the ability to, it's going to be one of my core values, compete to win, the ability to keep up with the activity metrics. You can't, don't overthink it. If you're not driving activity, if you think that you're going to find the perfect candidate and you're going to reach out to that perfect candidate and you're only going to focus on that perfect candidate, you're going to fail. Because if the candidate might not be interested, the money's not right, the location, they don't like there's a million things. You need to be talking to people. And so that is a hard skill. Like you need to be transaction oriented and you need to be able to move. If you're not moving fast, you just can't keep up. Urgency, if you don't have urgency, you won't be able to keep up. It's just, we're moving just too fast.
It's interesting you say that. And it's kind of triggering something in my head. I go back to my first couple of weeks of training coming into being a recruiter about 8 years ago, and that word activity. And Tom kept beating it into my head. He's like, you need volume. You have to open up volume, but it's not, you have to be smart about the volume that you're bringing in. And you have to have a couple of initial calls. And the word that keeps kind of coming into my head every single day is recalibrate. I'm always closing the aperture of the search. I'm always recalibrating. And if you're not doing that as a recruiter and you're just spinning in circles, no. And it goes back to listening to the clients on your intake call. One of the things that I love to ask, and my recruiters do too, and this is kind of how you add value, say, hey, Dan, we're interviewing for your positions. You know, we're looking for the best candidates here. What are a couple of questions that you would ask on a job interview that I could ask up front to filter out? Yeah. Right? Like how do you kind of continue to do that? So I want to, like, a lot of people say to me all the time, like, Adam, I'm looking to get into recruiting. I want to be a recruiter. It's kind of one of those things. And like a real estate agent, everyone thinks because maybe they sold a house, they did some home repair that, hey, I could be a real estate agent. But what they don't understand, they don't understand the mortgages, the closing process, the attorneys, the fees, everything that goes into it. But there are those transferable skills. What are some of those transferable skills for people that are looking to break into recruiting?
I think, so a couple things. Number one is, and this is tough. You have to enjoy working with people, different kinds of people, not forming judgment, just people. You don't know who's going to be the next superstar based on the industries that we work with, right? They're all different types of industries. So that's number one. Number two, rejection. I literally
just wrote that down here because I wanted to talk about that. Let's get into it. Yeah.
Reject. I mean, you have to be able to handle rejection.
Lots of losses. Right? We're going to put up more losses in our industry than wins.
That's right.
We would be kicked out, sent to the minors if we were a starting pitcher, right? It'd be like, because you're good at, because the wins outpay the losses, but you're going to take a lot of L's in recruiting, and you have to be able to handle that. Reject. You have to have thick skin.
Yeah, that's right. And you get emotionally attached, and sometimes you get too close to the candidates or an opportunity, and you need an open mind to be able to see clearly and to be rational.
Yeah, no, absolutely there. So 22 years in the industry, like how long you do this? Is there an end game for you? Is there an exit strategy?
You know what? The toughest years were 2001 starting, of course, 08, 09. And that's it. Those are the two bumps. Other than that, it's been wonderful. You know how nice it is to have, work with incredible people, positive environment. Now we're 100% virtual, which was a big transition for us. We went from a big bullpen to now people across the United States, which, by the way, is way better.
Well, how's that working out for junior recruiters who don't see the body language, who don't hear the phone calls, who don't see how we operate in the bullpen?
You know what we use? So we're a Google shop. We use Google Meet and Google Chat all day long. Like, just like you and I talking like right now. That's what we do. We're on when I'm talking to someone, I call them on a chat. I'm looking at video.
Right,
We're talking to them all day long, all the time. Now, maybe some companies think, oh, you're virtual. You never see each other. It's not how it works. Like we just got back from our club trip. We didn't meet some people. We haven't even met some people in person, but you know them so well.
Yeah.
When they get off the plane, you give them a hug because like, hey, what's up? Let's go. It's awesome.
Your old buddies there. So I heard you talking on another podcast about how people are increasingly interested in learning about selling through socials. Like, what have you learned about effective selling through social media?
Oh my God. Everything's changed so much. From picking up the phone call and calling through the yellow pages now to selling socially. It has changed the world. Now you know something about everyone. I think you had just mentioned it, right? You know something. A matter of fact, look, you had obviously seen listened to another one of the podcasts. There's so much access to so much information, and so now you can be personable. You can connect almost immediately. And if you're not using social media and devices, you just won't get through. But by the way, there's no one. You need all of them. No, you need everything. You need the phone. You need text. You need social media. You need email. You need every single tool at your disposal.
And that's what you got to do. So let me ask you this. Going back. I mean, you mentioned the bumps, and you've been through down cycles, and the world that I'm living right now in marketing across Web 2 and Web 3, we're in a down cycle. Mass layoffs across tech, and it's tough. And I'm going through a tough period right now. I continue to be invaluable to my clients. I stay on their radar, but what advice would you give me to kind of push through this downturn? Recruiter to recruiter.
That is a good question. So we usually run about 1.2 million in job openings per week. We're down about half. We got about 600,000. So that's substantial.
And that's comp, right? Like you're basing that on comp?
That's fees.
Okay.
Those are fees. So I mean, we run a lot of opportunities. So if you're in sales and you're looking for an opportunity, you really should be talking to us because we have a lot of activity. But I think this is the big thing. The big thing is we are so well connected with our community. We're so well connected with the hiring managers, our VC partners that are building out different organizations. Like we're so well connected, and they know we'll do the right thing. That for us, it's about coaching, free advice, helping them through their own challenging times. So whatever challenging times we have, we know that they're facing the same thing. So how can we help them? How can we help them figure out their challenges? Right now, maybe they have a C Salesforce, and in actuality, it's probably the best time for them to recruit from their competition, right? Okay. I mean, there's so many different ways to look at a less aggressive economy. But there's so much opportunity out there.
You have to find the opportunities in the downturns and through the darkness, and it's tough. And as long as this is what I keep telling myself, numbers are down year over year because of the economy. I'm still doing the right thing. I'm still pushing in the right direction. I'm doubling down on relationships. I'm doubling down on content, continuing to build the brand. So take the hit, right? There's nothing you could do about it. I can't create jobs to fill. I can't do that.
Right.
So what can I do? Manage the things that are in my control. So Dan, let's bring it home here. And I'd love to ask this question: what is the single greatest piece of advice that you've ever received that you take action on every single day? And I'm going to give you a second to think about that because I want to use this opportunity to share my greatest piece of advice that I got from my recruiting mentor, Tom Hull. On my first day of recruiting, he said to me, and I say this every morning when I turn on my computer: plan your work and work your plan. Plan your work and work your plan. I keep that my head keeps me organized and keep me straight. So Dan, what is the single greatest piece of advice?
Yeah, Tony Nutella, big believer in positive mental affirmation. Today is going to be the best day of my life. Wake up every day. Today is going to be the best day of my life. I used to chant that on the way to work.
I feel you.
Today is going to be the best day of my life. And that is because every day is not, you have good days and bad days, but today you're alive. It's not the past. It's not the future. It's right now. Make this the best day of your life. That is always helped me with a positive attitude, always push forward no matter what the challenge is, what the day looks like. Today is going to be the best day of my life.
Amen. And you got to remember, we've survived 1,000% of our bad days, right? We've survived every one of them. So, last but not least, I mean, you look back on your life, you look back on your career, and not everything was sunshine and rainbows. There was those tough times when you had to dig down deep and really pull up and harness that inner tenacity to drive you forward and come out on the other side with gratitude and happiness for this life, for this family, for this career, for the fact that you employ people and you've changed people's own careers, right? Dan Fantasia, what keeps you focused? What is your beacon? What is your lighthouse? What is your North Star in life?
Actually, I think change has been a wonderful piece of our business at Treeline. We're constantly in change. Like, we're always trying to figure out what we need to be doing better, how we can be doing differently. If the economy's down, okay, the economy's down. What do we need to change to be more effective? And of course, we talk about it as a company all the time. What do we need to do to be better? What do we need to do to change? What are our clients saying? What is the recruiting team saying? We're always looking for how to be better, what we need to do to pivot and change. And that has really helped us through the 22 years. You can't stay, you just can't keep, if I was doing the same thing I did on day one, just banging the phones, I would have went out of business a long time ago. So it's always about change. And new people bring a lot of change. They have new ideas. They come into a company and they have great ideas. And those people, we really encourage everyone to speak up, because those people many times don't think they have a voice. No. But in actuality, sometimes their voice and ideas are the best ideas we have. And as a result, we change, we pivot, we try things. We fail all the time, Adam. And we used to be a full desk recruiting company up until like probably the first 18 years. We switched to a sales, so a net new sales team, account management team, and a recruiting team. That has also helped us in times like these continue to bring in new clients.
I love it.
Because we have a focused effort we're not getting distracted with anything else.
Salespeople are selling, recruiters are recruiting.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And that took 18 years to figure out, by the way.
But you did, and you figured it out. So Dan, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your insights into the world of recruiting, and I hope everyone out there enjoyed the show. Getting back to the roots here, and I hope you could hear it in my voice and my energy and sharing some of the stories, because that's what the show was all about. 4.5 years ago. You guys could learn more about Dan, what he does, at treelineinc.com. Where else could folks find you and connect with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Dan Fantasia, or call me.
Call him.
781-327-8902.
867-5309. Give him a ring here, folks. Dan, this has been fun. Hang with me 1 second here as I wrap it up. And everyone out there, if you enjoyed the show, sharing means caring, goes a long way. Please leave a review, recommendation. That helps spread the word too. Remember, take care of each other. Listen, pause, think, and be kind to your fellow man and woman and child and dog and animal and pet out there. You can find out more at thepodcast.com and catch us next week for another great episode of the podcast. Take care, everybody.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode soon, jam-packed with more incredible humans. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and sharing. To join the conversation, search the podcast on LinkedIn. And to catch up on past episodes and more info, please visit www.thepodcast.com.